and welcome to Darkly Lit, where horror literally jumps off the pages.
Ah.
I am your host, Kayla Berry.
And I am Sade.
And I am David, and that's not my brother.
And today we're going to be discussing Through the Woods by Emily Carroll.
I love this book.
I do too. This is really good. First of all, it's a very quick read. It's only 30 minutes long. I think, it only takes 30 minutes. It's
it definitely took me under an hour to read.
Mm-hmm.
It's a graphic novel,
it's a comic anthology. So you got multiple stories in here.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to give the description before we continue?
Okay, well, I was thinking we could do a quick little bio on Emily Carroll, and then maybe, because we normally do the summary of the whole book, but since we have multiple little stories, what if we do a summary, discuss that story, next summary, story, or discussion?
That seems...
And then we can maybe
good.
do the questions at the end?
Sure. I like this idea. Okay. Yeah, I think, for this type of book, I think that's the best way.
Cool beans. Then, let me tell you a bit about Emily Carroll, who is probably my favorite webcomic artist. Emily Carroll is a Canadian artist and comic author. I think she was born in London, Ontario.
Oh, dang.
Back. And I think she first started getting... Well, she did. Let me look this, make sure I got my numbers right. She first started getting recognition for her webcomics in 2010. Specifically with one of her first comics, which was His Face All Red, which is in the anthology we read, so we'll get to talk about that. Emily has done work for different anthologies, including Explorer, Mystery Boxes, Fairy Tale Comics, Creepy, The Witching Hour, and in 2014, she got to publish her own little anthology, Through the Woods, which is what we read. I have my own copy. I love it.
This is a fairly recent novel then, which is pretty cool.
In 2014, she also released another short webcomic, comic style called The Hole the Fox Did, which is on her website. And I highly recommend everyone who enjoyed the book to go read that one too, and just to definitely check out her website because she has a lot of comics up on there. You can find her at mcarroll.com. And the Hole the Fox Did Make is probably another one of my favorites of her. She's also done some illustration work on graphic novels, Baba Yaga's Assistant, and a graphic novel adaptation of Speak. She has also co-created this game called The Yog, which is a 1 to 2 person choose your adventure game.
Ooh.
Or, sorry, 1 to 4 person. Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah, and let me read the little synopsis of it for you. The evil Yog is returning. How will the town's locals lead their lives in the meanwhile? And what will they do when the dreaded Yog finally arrives? And I watched a little demo of it, and I think we should play it. I will drag Ravel in, and I think the 4 of us should play it, because it looks like a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a great idea. Ooh, if we could record it, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, that is definitely
fun.
What I want to do. We'll turn it into something maybe connected with the Witching Hour, and we'll do something with it. But I definitely think the 4 of us should play it. It is on Steam. I'm gonna put a link to that, to The Hole the Fox Did Make, and to His Face All Red in the show notes. If you read the print version, then you read His Face All Red, and when you read it on the website, it's got that infinite canvas format where you're scrolling down, and I think it's a different experience. I honestly like it better online, because you're scrolling down, and there's just this slightly more, just definitely more unnerving feeling that you get. So, whether you've read it already, I definitely go say, check out her website, mcarroll.com. Also want to point out that she is an LGBT artist and writer, so fuck yeah.
I actually looked at her up just to see, look some details about her too. I like how, and then at the end it says she lives with her wife in Canada. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So, I really like her. I love her stuff, and I'm excited to talk about this with you guys.
All right, let's do this. First off, should we discuss the artwork before we get into it?
Well, you can't really discuss the comic without the artwork. Well, and the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Can we discuss the fact that in the first thing, one of the people who praises Through the Woods is Kate Beaton, who is one of my favorite webcomic artists. She does Hark a Vagrant.
Ooh.
Emily Carroll should be recognized as one of the best graphic storytellers out there. Yes, Kate, that is quite a glowing endorsement, and I will agree with you there.
We have our book open so we can follow along. And
yeah.
Okay, awesome. I do too.
it does make it helpful. I'm not going to lie, especially since, first of all, the graphic imagery in this is incredible. Like, it's not as like.
Well, her use of colors and color palettes is amazing. Like just in the first few pages where it goes kind of from day to night and inverts the colors from like black to white with the trees and stuff, so you get a sense of where it's going. But that's even before you get to the table of contents. It's like it's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like the artwork is always like slightly different for each story too. Like it fits the theming of what she's trying to tell.
Yes, for sure. It's so cool, and it's got a very good, like, I don't know if she was inspired by like the work of Edward Gorey, but it's definitely got a Gorey quality to the way she does some of the landscapes and even some of the characters, you know?
I can see.
I love there's just a lot of thought into the whole composition of just like if you read a lot of like graphic novels, especially if you read things like manga, speech bubbles are just bubbles that are there. And here, the text and the bubbles themselves are part of the illustration. Especially when we get to one of the ones later on with the singing from the walls. Like, you have this just red that goes across the whole page. And I fucking love it because you just follow it. And there's just a lot of attention to where your eye needs to be going. And we were talking about it on the Creative Power Discord with some of our listeners, specifically with Alex. Hi, Alex. Thanks for your questions. We'll get to them later.
Yes.
But
thank you very much, Alex.
Some of these stories don't even need the text to convey what they're trying to get across.
No,
the
they really don't.
Is just that strong.
So yeah, I can.
It's definitely the most integrated I've seen, and that's one thing that's consistently true of a lot of Emily Carroll's work in general. But because I have read some of her comics before this, some of her webcomics, but I definitely know what you're talking about when it comes to the scrolling thing, because I do remember reading His Face All Red a while ago and remember the tension that built when you're scrolling and watching, and that she consciously made the decision to make some parts of the comic like work with the scrolling of the page, you know? Like, that's a subtext that's really and a conscious decision based on the formatting that is really clever. There was another one she did that had fake pop-up advertisements on the sides of the page.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they like little flash advertisements for things that were clearly in her style, but they're based on like what's happening in the comic. And as it goes on, even those on the side change to be more macabre and eerie, which is really cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
I'll look it up while we're having this discussion, but and I'll give it proper credit. But right now, I just want to, just reference that she knows what she's doing, and with the composition of her work, and that's one of the things that really appeals to me. And we'll get into that. But like the integration of the text and the comics, the pages themselves makes it stand out.
I have never read anything by Emily Carroll before this. This is my first introduction to her, and it's a strong introduction, so I do want to read more of her work. Actually, as you're telling me more about this, I'm like, that sounds so cool. I want to read that now. And honestly, that actually might be something to address later on Darkly Lit, especially as a medium that's a bit different from a typical text too. So that'd be a fun one to do.
Oh, definitely.
So we have the introduction.
Right.
which has the Little Red Riding Hood theme.
Well, there's a little bit of one.
The pages leading up to it, we see a cloaked figure going through the trees. The introduction itself is we see a girl reading in bed.
Right. I feel like this is a personal anecdote about her and how when she was afraid to turn the light off at night because it was such a powerful bright light that it made everything around her be in the dark. And she was afraid of reaching out to turn off the light. She was afraid something would grab her. And I think that's really cool. This is a neat way to give a sense of like how how this, was very formative for her. And
it's very relatable for a lot of readers from like their childhood. And I'm remembering now that when I bought this copy that I own, I found it in the children's section for graphic novels.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is not a good idea.
Like, I don't think it's like it's not suitable for kids. It would definitely be scarier for kids.
But that last story. Yeah, we'll get into that. It's like most of it. It's like, yeah, I can accept it for kids. But the last story, though,
I loved this as a kid.
Oh, me too.
But I love that last story. When I first picked this book up and I was reading through it, my mother glanced over my shoulder, and I think she saw the part where a character's like going through the woods, and it's like, oh, pretty trees and scenery. Finally, you're reading something nice. And then I turn a couple pages, and it's like monster face, and she's like, oh my god, never mind. She walks away. My poor mother.
Aww.
All right. But shall we get into the first story?
Our neighbor's house, yes.
Our neighbor's house. So our neighbor's house is about three sisters, and the story is being told from the middle sister's perspective, Beth. And so their father is like, I'm gonna be gone in the woods for 3 days, because they live out in the middle in the woods, and it's winter.
Yep.
And he's like, I'll be gone for 3 days. If I'm not back by sunset on the third day, travel to the neighbor's house. And so they wait the 3 days. And on the third night, there is a blood red moon. And they know, Dad's not coming back. So the middle sister gets stuff ready to leave, but the eldest is insistent that their father will return. He doesn't. And after a really strange dream about a tall man with a wide-brimmed hat, the eldest sister disappears. Then the youngest sister has a similar dream, and then she disappears. And so the middle sister is left alone, and she has no food, no water, so she grabs her coat and heads into the cold wilderness to the neighbor's house, hoping her sisters are there waiting for her. But when she gets there, she is welcomed by the tall man with the wide brim hat.
But he's not a man.
He is no man, says the last page.
Yep.
Yep.
So spooky.
So spooky, yes.
And there's one of the things that's really subtle is when she's looking around the house and in previous panels, when you see little traces of a figure disappearing around a corner or hiding under a bed. And you never see the figure clearly, but you definitely see hands pulling a wide-brimmed hat out of sight, and I love it.
There's one where, you see him holding the younger sister in her coat.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, it's so creepy. I also, I actually think it is the Fox the Hole did make, there's also a tall man in that story. So I'm wondering, I need to read more and see if he comes up in other things, if he's a character.
It'd be cool if this was a recurring character. I
do love that in different stories when there's that one recurring character that's ooh, what is it?
Yeah. He's got kind of a creepy, the traces you see, the wide brimmed hat, and at one point you see that he's wearing like cufflinks, and he's got a white he's got his shirt sleeve has a white cufflink collar. Or him, he almost has a creepy preacher look to him. From the little segments you can see, I like that.
Yeah, we're looking over the imagery right now. And oh my goodness, like if you don't look closely, you might just miss it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely have to, while you're reading, just stop to look at the artwork.
Mm-hmm. You gotta take your time.
Yeah, there's one image where it shows the two sisters it's in the middle sister's mind that they're supposedly waiting at the neighbor's house, and then you look in, and in the back you see this like woman and a hat hanging, and it's just
you see some shadowy figures in the background, and you're like not sure what those are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can definitely tell one is the back of a woman. The other one is a little harder to make out.
Yeah, makes you wonder. It's so good. It's a great start. And I love the shot where she's walking to the house. It's night, but there's either a blood red moon or a sun or something with clouds drifting by it. And maybe those are snow instead of stars. It's such a good shot. Mm-hmm. And I like the moment where he reaches out and puts arm reaches out and puts the hat on her head and leads her into the house. And the thing is, if this is the neighbor they were going to see, how do we know that something horrific necessarily happened? Because the final panel has he is no man, but then you see the house, it looks warm, inviting, and you can see the silhouettes of people in the windows. Maybe this figure isn't as terrible as we think, as we're led to believe. I don't know.
But then he's hiding in their house and such.
Yeah, it's definitely creepy. I'm just saying, and things aren't always as they appear in a lot of this. So
I take the tall man figure
go ahead.
as more of like a Grim Reaper.
Oh.
And that's why. And then like that's why she's kind of like, just like, oh, okay, he found me. You know, gonna go inside, and it's like they were all suffering, and so when they finally just go with the tall man, they're released from that suffering. So it's kind of warm and inviting in a way.
They do mention how on the third day they were gripped by a strange lethargy. So
yeah,
I wonder if this is I'm actually now I'm coming around to that. What if this is all a metaphor for death? Like them all just dying in the cold.
That would actually make sense, because she says, like, I had no food, so I had to go to the neighbors. And she's like walking, and she's like, it looks like it's a long way. She could have easily died in the snow along with her sisters.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to say about that one? It's delightfully ambiguous, which is cool.
I feel like this one would translate really well into a short film.
Yes.
Oh, like a short animated film?
Animated or live action, either is fine. Just
highly stylized would be.
Yeah, just very highly stylized. But I think it would transition really well for a short film.
For sure.
Like, you don't even need much speech. Like, you don't even need the middle sister to be narrating. Like, there could be a lot of quiet moments, and it'd be so good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So the next one.
A Lady's Hands Are Cold.
Mm-hmm.
This one... Man, these are all so good. Okay, this one's about a young woman who is married off by her father to a rich nobleman, and she's taken away to a wide white manor, and there she kind of describes like the beautiful dresses that she's put in, and there's at night she hears singing, soft, sad song from like the walls, from the ground, from just like different places every night, until she's just like so grief-stricken over this song. Do either of you want to read what the song is?
I'll do it. I married my love in the springtime, but by summer he'd locked me away. He'd murdered me dead by the autumn, and by winter I was naught but decay. It's cold where I am and so lonely, but in loneliness I will remain, unloved, unavenged, and forgotten, until I am whole once again.
So, grief-stricken, and then on a day when I think the husband goes on a hunting trip or goes away for a while, She dismisses her handmaids and gets herself a hatchet, and she carves into a wall and finds a set of hands, of cold hands.
Yes.
So then she starts, going through the whole house, finding different body parts under floorboards and the stairs and the walls, until she finally finds the head last. And she reattaches all the body parts with red ribbon, and the corpse comes to life and tells her pretty much she was murdered.
Yep.
Surprise!
By her husband, and she is the new bride, and you're wearing my jewels, but she will be whole when she tears her apart.
Yep. Because, she just has to be a vengeful ghost.
Mm-hmm. So the girl runs.
She runs, and as she ran out of the house, she hears the screams of her husband.
Yes. I guess he was returning. Ooh.
I forgot about this panel, but yeah, you see the window of the house.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just oohed at. You see.
Yeah. I figured we were looking at the same page, but you see like splashes of red on the window and what looks like a hand in the same red splashes, like symbolic of how he's just probably being torn apart now that she's.
Someone's gonna get torn apart.
And then the last panel is pretty creepy too, because now we have, I presume, still our protagonist, but now she's starting to turn blue.
She's like, because as she's running away, she's got this gold yellow dress, and then on the last page, like almost all of the color is gone. Her hand and her face have gone from like pink red to blue. She survived, but like all her life has been drained out of her.
What a harrowing experience.
Although she may have died. That could be because, like you said, the life was drained out of her. That maybe she is now the lady with cold hands, but instead of being killed by her husband, it's by his old bride. That's one option, but that I kind of like yours better.
I like the thought of her surviving, and then this is just gonna haunt her forever.
Yeah, like now she's the haunted one. Now that she's witnessed this, even though ultimately what she did was a good thing. She brought the truth to light and allowed this murdered woman to get revenge. But
the one thing I like about this is the use of blue and red.
Yeah,
those are definitely the two main colors that we get here.
And it's right off the bat, the motifs are kind of established. The woman is red, and the man is blue. And one of the scenes that got to me is everything in the house is blue. The wallpaper is blue. The furniture is blue. There's just blue motifs, like shocking blue everywhere. And there's the part where they're having dinner early on, and you see close-ups of him like chewing and eating meat, and it's very rare, I guess, because there's a lot of red juices coming from it, and it keeps contrasting to the color in her own cheeks, which is also red, and it's like you definitely get the predatory sense from him, but there's that contrast, and it's just like it's so good. Not to mention when the dead woman is brought back together, she's pretty scary looking.
Yeah, and it's like it's used by the red ribbon, and then the red ribbon is kind of used basically as like a background for the text.
Yeah.
She starts talking.
Not to mention she's wearing a red brooch that chokes her, and you see in flashback that when the original bride being murdered by the husband, he's choking her to death, and he's got his thumbs pressed on the ruby part of the brooch, which is right up against like the front of her throat. So that brooch is important because he gave it to her. And then when she's running from the house, and the spirit of the woman tries to get her, it tears the necklace from her throat, so she's not wearing it anymore.
What I really like, there's a page where she's standing in front of the wall, and it's just this massive blue wall, and she's just like yellow in the bottom.
Yeah.
The page beside it, and this is also used in another story that we're going to get to, where the red, you see the hatchet coming down on the wall, and then the wall is red. It's like showing the action, like the violence in that part. And I feel like all the blue is very passive and cold, and the red is where there's like life or just violence or some kind of passion.
Mm-hmm.
So So
they talk about the house being cold a lot in this story.
Yeah, that's one.
And you definitely get that feeling because it's all blue.
Yeah,
blue and white.
It's this is personally of the collection. This is my favorite story.
I could see that. Actually,
I like it. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good haunted house story, but it's also I kind of dig the very Bluebeard vibes I'm getting from this.
Oh, okay, yeah. I actually had that thought too. I almost thought it was going to go down the green ribbon route for a sec.
Oh yeah, like the
one where
I told you you'd be sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it didn't. But it does keep with that whole, not fairy tale. That's not the right word. Legend vibe. Kind of a.
It's very gothic, this particular story.
Yes. It feels like a gothic legend or like a gothic tale that would be passed down like during campfires and such, and I like that. Do we have anything else to say about this?
I just like it a lot.
This is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous.
Yeah. Every single page is gorgeous.
I love the colors. I love the color theory in this one. And it's cool. Literally. It's very cold. Yes.
Da 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 da. Basically, we're going to be just geeking out about
every single story in
here,
honestly.
I know. They're all really good. So the next one is His Face All Red.
And this one for me is probably my favorite.
This man is not my brother.
So this one's about, our protagonist. Notice is the only one in this anthology with a male protagonist.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Alex does ask a question about that later on, and we'll get into that later. But
well, this one is about a man and his brother, who is not his brother. He describes his brother as this really well-off, very liked man with a plump young wife, fine clothes, and a face, his handsome face, that just makes everyone trust him. And the first few pages, we're seeing his brother, and he's surrounded by all these men, who I say are swooning over him.
Oh.
I mean, look at him staring. One's even resting his hand on his chin, just being like, look at this gorgeous man. Anyway,
that's Gaston. No one's thinking Gaston.
It's pretty much. But gay.
He basically is the Gaston of his village, let's be honest.
But, like, good. Everyone likes him.
Yeah, and this one's actually married and not, like, trying to prove how not gay he is by hitting on the most attractive woman in town.
So he's describing his brother, and then he's like, but this is not my brother. I killed my brother last week.
Oh!
And so we learn of this beast that has been killing livestock, and when our protagonist volunteered to go hunt the beast, everyone laughs, at least until his brother says he'll go with him, and so they trudge into the woods, and they find a creepy black hole, and then they find the beast. And while our protagonist hides, the brother has slain the beast, and it was just a wolf. And then the protagonist kills his brother, drops him in the creepy hole. And he goes back to town with a piece of torn scrap from the brother's coat, saying the brother was killed by the beast, but he killed the beast and avenged his brother. And 3 days later, the brother comes back without any injuries, saying he got lost, and thank goodness for his brother that he killed the beast. And our protagonist notices things like, oh, his coat isn't torn, or oh, he's like digging in the night. Why? That's not my brother. Or is it my brother? Why won't he look at me? So our protagonist goes back into the woods and down the pit to check to see what is down there. And I don't even want to say, just go read it.
Yeah, let's not give away the ending for this one.
The link is in the show notes. Just pause and go read it right now. If you haven't already.
This is the one that's online, correct?
Yeah, this one's online. This is the one that I was talking about, how this, like, you just gotta read it online, because even if you have read the print version, it's so much more unnerving.
Yeah, I think in that case, yeah, let's not reveal the ending for that one and try to keep it a bit spoiler free. the interesting thing is,
despite our assumption that our audience is reading along with us or has read this before joining us for this episode, because again, we're like a book club.
Yeah, exactly. we're always under the assumption that listeners have read the book prior to listening, so that we can discuss it and not have to worry about spoiling things. If you haven't, though, this is one where we're strongly encouraging you to just go read it.
Right. I will say, like the first story, I feel like this one is, again, can be very ambiguous. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of once again, there's no real resolution per se. No questions really get answered. Mm-hmm. It's just a peculiar thing. It's the whole thing is very peculiar and terrifying.
I kind of like this idea that you're not really sure if this really is in the protagonist's head or not.
Right.
I mean, until the end, but like, it's like, is he really mad? Is he not? One thing I also noted too is the artwork for this is actually a lot different from like the earlier, or the first two, where there was minimal colors. This one, there's like actually colors like in there. Like
this one, like I mentioned earlier, this is one of her very first comics.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this one was done much, much earlier than I think these other ones, like maybe 2-3 years apart since this came. The anthology came out in 2014. This one, His Face Is All Red, she did in 2010.
Okay.
One thing I did note too is there is still a bit of a color overlay too. Like the panel still feels like it's feels all red, even though there is a bunch of other colors to signify
it's
to
still
people.
Very warm palettes. Like
exactly.
each page has like and I do like that because like in those pages where we have like he's watching his brother with a group of men, everyone else in the background is very warm, and then the brother stands out because of his blue coat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Not to mention, at nights, like days and nights are very different in this. At night, everything is again very blue. The blue palette is super strong, and like you mentioned earlier, when the wolf is killed, there's the flash of red, and when the brother is killed, there's also a flash of red for the panel sort of symbol. And they're both. It is prudent to mention that I think they're both shot, because you see that the brother was carrying a rifle, and I presume that the rifle was used on both of them.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that makes sense. They're going hunting.
Yeah.
So
it's a musket by the look of it, but yeah.
Yeah, because you get that feeling of it just being this very instant second of red, and it's done. They're dead. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I just realized you could probably make a little bit of a Cain and Abel analogy here.
That is true. This kind of like jealousy, and then two brothers, and then the jealousy of one leads to the murder of another. Yeah. And then now he's being punished for it. If not by something supernatural, then by his own guilt, like destroying his psyche.
Right.
Or is there a supernatural element? It's like, when the part that gets to me that's really creepy. Well, one, when he like drops his brother in the hole. I just love the sequence of those panels where it's like the hole, then him dragging his brother, him holding his brother, and then just him alone looking down at the hole. And I'm just like, oh God.
And then there's that one panel of the hole later at night. It's just, there's nothing in the scene. You're just looking at the hole. There's nothing weird about the hole. It's just a hole at night, deserted by itself, and it's just ominous.
Because you know he's just like, when his brother comes back, he's just thinking back to that hole and imagining it there in the darkness, in the woods, and it's just like the creepy.
And the smell of lilacs.
So good. It's that is interesting because the hole smells like lilac, right?
Yeah, that's the part of it.
And then when he's talking about his brother, the brother had a lilac bush next to his house.
He did.
God, I love that there's like all these subtle pieces to the
oak trees that had leaves that looked like ladies' hands. Because the brother is like spooked of everything in the woods. He always says, "Oh, these look like ladies' hands," and he goes, "It's an oak bush," and it's like, and a stream that sounded like growling dogs, and it's just like it was a babbling brook. Everything is just low key to the older brother. So
also, like, the brother who comes back, There's a lot of unanswered questions, and I love that about this one in some of the stories. It's just like, that's kind of like why they're so horrifying, is because you have these unanswered questions, so it lingers with you because you're just left wondering and speculating.
Right.
Like, the brother who comes back, he sees him at night digging, and you see him, he's digging a hole. Is he digging a grave for the brother because he killed him, or is he digging another pit? Like, what is it?
What does it mean? What does it mean? And, you know, I feel like that's the power of a lot of horror stories that I think are lost to some people today. There doesn't have to be an answer for everything. Some people get so frustrated and like, you know, there has to be an answer. We want answers. There needs to be definitive. The ambiguity of this is what makes it so good, honestly, because it's it's what's unsaid that is so satisfying. I know people have asked me, hey, is there a direct explanation for some of the things you've written spooky story-wise, David? And I go, yeah, in the back of my head there is, but I'm not going to tell you.
Well, there's this idea, and I believe this to be true, that with horror, you don't show everything because sometimes what's in the reader's imagination is more horrifying than whatever the writer can come up with.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it works if you leave it a bit ambiguous. Not like so ambiguous. I mean, this Emily Carroll does a great job with ambiguity. But, I mean, there's some horror stories where it's like they're too ambiguous or there's not enough information. It's like, what are you, why, what?
Why?
But just a little bit of ambiguity creates that, like,
it goes a long way.
What happened? What's going on? And then the reader usually will think of the worst, and this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this one.
There is the two pages where he's descending down into the pit to check what is down there. It goes, he's at the top of the pit, and you see him going down. And it's like there's this blue for the cold night. But then once we see him reaching the bottom of the pit, it switches to that red, which makes sense because it's like, this is a scene of a murder, like a body. Yep. But then there's also like that warm earth color is what it makes me think of. Like there's life down here, but what exactly is living down there?
Ooh, yes. It's so good. Not to mention, you know, his face all red. It's like the red is now a color of guilt too. So.
Ugh, so good. I want to know what is going on.
I don't. I'm happy to live in that. I'm happy to let the mystery be. We only have a couple more stories, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's only two more. The next one is My Friend Jana.
My Friend Jana.
Which is told from the protagonist Yvonnie. She's describing her friend Jana, who is her childhood friend, and Jana speaks to the dead.
Dun, dun.
Or conducts seances. And we find out that it is all fake, and it's actually Yvonnie in the walls making the spooky noises while Jana puts on her show. And there's a scene where they are walking and they find a dead rabbit. You can also tell that this takes place during the whole period where spiritualism was a thing. Because, you know, the seances and because of how they're dressed.
Yeah, the whole Fox sisters.
Exactly.
We've been I noticed this. We've been kind of moving forward in time a little bit.
Actually,
yeah.
Because it does begin, like, much earlier on. Like, you can tell this was probably, like the first story probably begins, like, God, like, maybe, like, 1800s or early 1800s, something like that. Yeah. Maybe even earlier. And then, it does seem to go a bit forward in time.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt your summary.
No, that's good. That's a good observation. It really does.
And then the last story is definitely the most, like, recent one. Like,
the most modern day. And you can just tell that by the attire they're wearing.
Dude, Yvonne's cute.
I do like Yvonnie. She's a cutie.
She's adorable.
Actually, I really like Belle in the last one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But, so they find a dead rabbit, and they're doing the seances, and Jana doesn't really want to do them anymore. But she doesn't really see a way out. And just gradually, over time, they grow apart. Because we learn that Yvonnie can see something that Jana doesn't. Her friend is haunted. So it turns out that while Jana is just pretending to see spirits, Yvonne actually can see them. And there's one that is possessing her friend, or just kind of like, well, I guess haunting was the best way to say it.
No, it's haunting. Haunting is fitting because this thing is only ever around Jana.
Mm-hmm.
I love, by the way, just to pause, I love the look of the ghost too, like the fact that it has like these like veins, because she even says it has a heartbeat, I think, and it's just like, oh, that's so creepy.
But it's never there all the time. It just pulses every so often with this like arterial red network that just appears appears through it and then vanishes in this misty form. It's so good.
Creepy. But so then as time passes, Jana's like, she's becoming more distant, she's irritable, she doesn't want to do the seances anymore, and so the two are growing apart. And then there's creepy writing.
Yeah,
creepy writing in the journal.
You actually see what Jana has written, and yeah, it's nonsense, but then it's like,
but there's some sort of logic to it. Like she's got what seems to be a map of a house, a parlor, sunset, a quiet room with a table, a single chair. Like she's got like points to this like weird circular area.
Like there's actually a method to this madness.
Matted with teeth yet bared. There's some, and then there's something going on. She's got, it's really fascinating. There's 2 pages of this, and then she's just writing all this just macabre, bizarre stuff with all these weird illustrations too, and it's very cool.
So one night, Yvonne is in bed, and she shares a room with her little sister, and Jana is at the window. But Yvonne sends her away until she realizes, okay, something has to be wrong. So she goes to Jana's house, sees something terrifying in the window. But when she goes to check on Jana, her friend has disappeared.
And they never find her.
Nope. And then we're left with Yvonne, who is now being haunted by the same spirit. Or whatever it is that Jana was.
So spooky.
I do love that last page where we're looking at Yvonne, and it's the thing has its arms or tendrils or whatever it might be around her, and that red is just kind of like bleeding onto her face.
Yeah.
So good.
What I like about this is there's kind of hints at what they think it might be. Some people like Yvonne thinks it might have been the spirit of the dead rabbit. Mm-hmm. But it seems like a very odd thing. Like, why did this, like the rabbits, them touching her, because only Yvonne or only Jana touches the rabbit.
Mm-hmm. It could be that the spirit that was haunting the rabbit now started haunting Jana, and then now it's passed on to Yvonne.
Right. Like it tried to get to her the night of or at least I think it did the night that Jana came to the window. I should mention there's a bit early on, this could again be subtext, but they talk about how they're close, like sisters, or sometimes closer, because I don't like my own sister. Now, platonic friendships are usually the norm, but I want to believe that there was a little bit of like affection, like deeper affection there.
I had the same
I do
thought.
too. I really think that like Yvonne loved Jana, but maybe it wasn't returned. Like she never brought that. She never said that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of have this feeling of this, we'll just call it the spirit or this white mist, that it's kind of like grief or just stress or just negative emotions that are just building and eating away at Jana until she's finally like disappeared. Because when we go back to when they find the rabbit, Jana makes this comment of like, oh, something has been eating away at it. That's kind of what you say, like, oh, this thing's been bothering me, it's been eating away at me, kind of.
Well, then she eventually says, like, I'm so done with people, and it's the whole ghost thing.
But the people keep coming. They believe, and they can't really drop. They don't want to drop the ghost act, or Jana doesn't really want to drop the ghost act.
I think it was more she couldn't see. She was just like so overcome with these emotions, she couldn't see a way out. Because that's what happens when people, you know, they get really depressed or they're really overwhelmed by just all these negative feelings. They aren't able to see the way out.
Yeah.
And so, like, Yvonne is left alone, and now she's full of negative emotions, and that's why this thing has attached itself to her now.
I can definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's... I also kind of, like, want to pretend that, like, maybe Jana got turned into a rabbit, so there's, like, another dead rabbit somewhere. That's why they can't find it. That's just me, like, adding shit that doesn't really need to be there.
Yeah.
Now I want, like, let me look to see if, like, if there's...
go back to the previous, hold on.
Like, if there's, like, any, like, signal of a dead rabbit or something, like...
No.
I can't remember anything from her notes or any of her weird writing that was, like, hinting at that at all.
Yeah.
Wherever she's gone, she's still my friend.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think that there's also that idea that maybe, like, they're, like, it's just a signal that this person's gonna die soon. I don't know. Well, then again, Jana didn't...
It seems that the force that's haunting Jana seems a lot more malignant, though.
Yeah.
Like, it seems... it's not as much of a metaphor as it is something actually, like, more malicious, something that has an intention that we don't...
Almost even, like, parasitic.
Yeah.
She got it from this dead rabbit.
Yeah, exactly.
It then moves on from Jana's being its host to Yvonne. I don't know.
Yeah. This one is also really good. This is another I like.
This one, interesting enough, like, it begins with a lot of color, and if you notice, it gets grayer and grayer.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Again, the colors are used. This is a very gray and white comic. This one in particular. This particular story.
Well, in the beginning, it's not. It's very colorful.
Yeah, but like, yeah, toward the end, the mist creeps in and sucks the color out of everything.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like, oh man.
Even on the pages that do have color, they're very muted colors.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's still a lot of that blue and red. Like, Yvonne's dress is blue and Jana's dress is red.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two main theme colors throughout the stories.
Aw, dang. More spiritualism stories, please.
Yes, please.
I'm really legit interested in that period right now.
It's a cool period.
The Victorian sort of mourning practices and spiritualism that sees the country. Fox sisters and their freaking cracking toes, like...
I actually can do that. I've shown you that I can crack my toes.
I've seen that. Our last story,
which is also the longest story, I
is...
think it's like a third of the book.
Yeah, it's the nesting place. This one actually is my favorite.
This one's definitely creepy.
Yeah.
So this last one is the story of a girl named Belle, or Mabel, but she goes by Belle. And it starts off with, like, we learn that Belle, I'm just gonna Belle. Belle's mother tells her stories of monsters when she's a kid, but she never really bought into them. And so we start the story of Belle when I want to say she's, like, in college.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's staying at school during the year, and so school is out, and because of the recent passing of her mother, she is going to the country to stay with her brother Clarence and his fiancée. They get to the house, and she meets Rebecca, who's the fiancée, and she's this beautiful woman, and she's also creepy.
Yep.
She's creepy. She's so creepy.
I'll explain, like, why I think she's especially creepy, even before you start to get suspicious of her.
Yeah, I think we might have the same suspicions, but we'll get to that.
But one of the things I've also noticed, like, her outfit and everything was when I realized, oh, this is definitely 1920s, 1930s, without a doubt.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. So she's staying with them, and she notices odd little weird things, like this weird tick thing that Rebecca's teeth makes when she's eating. Tick noise. I'm gonna call it a tick noise.
Yeah, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah. And so she just kind of grows very weary of Rebecca, and she's very... Belle is a very introverted, likes to stay inside, to herself kind of person. That's probably why I like her.
Yeah, I felt that too.
Mm-hmm. But then we have a scene where she's reading outside, and the housekeeper warns her not to go off into the woods. She could find herself trapped out there alone, like Rebecca did when she was little. So we learned that when Rebecca was a child, she got lost in the woods, fell into a cave and was stuck there for 3 days all alone in the dark until they found her. And then so it's just her becoming very suspicious of Rebecca, who seems to just be trying to get to know her. Then there's these weird marks on the housekeeper's hand, who then disappears the next morning. Belle is just all sorts of suspicious, not trusting this woman. And so she ventures out into the woods on her own, falls down the same cave that Rebecca had as a kid. When she comes to, she hears Rebecca's voice down in the cave. She kind of sneaks up on her, and Rebecca is talking to something in the dark, calling it my little ones.
I just turned it to the big reveal page.
And then bam! Junji Ito.
Oh my god, yeah. She calls out to Rebecca, and what turns around is not human. So Belle tries to run away. She doesn't escape. But when she comes to, she's in her bed. Her brother is looking over her, like caring for her. But then leaves her alone with Rebecca, who reveals that she is quite the monster. And wants Mabel, Belle, for her skin so that her little ones can wear her. And then she, her little ones, and Clarence will go into the city and just be a happy family. But Belle convinces Rebecca that in the city there's like pollution and that her children will suffer and that they'll end up in a hospital where they'll be dissected and put into jars, and convinces Rebecca she doesn't want to go to the city. And so her brother comes back and takes her to the doctor, and they're in the car, and then she learns that her brother might not be who she thinks. It's another really good one.
This is the one with the most sort of concrete explanation for what's going on.
Yeah,
like you actually get the whole gist of it. It's the most sort of classically complete story of the bunch.
You notice that this one's also much more the traditional graphic novel format of like panels and speech bubbles, where all the previous ones, our narrators it's like free floating text aside from anyone actually talking. We're in their heads. This is the only one where we're not really hearing Belle's thoughts. It's just speech bubbles and everyone talking.
You know, it's almost like the style of storytelling evolves to kind of match like the time period too, if you think about it.
That makes sense too.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a more modern story, so it's going to have a more modern storytelling method in terms of the way comics are done. Where the other ones are more sort of narrations with illustrations and the occasional words, scrawled across them. This is, like you said, it's more traditional in its telling. And it's also more traditional in that you have a solid, well, maybe not exactly solid, but a more concrete explanation within the universe about what's happened. And that's interesting. This is also one of the ones that has I think this one has the richest color palette of the bunch.
Oh, yeah. This has definitely the most colors. Although there is, like the others, there's still a bit of a muted tone to it.
Right. But I love, like, during the day, you see the woods. Everything is very yellow and gold with the trees and the leaves. When you see the monster version of Rebecca, the worms are bright, almost pink red.
The reason why I like this one the most is because it has that Junji Ito type monster, and I'm like, and it's a great like ending because you're like, okay, this is creepy. Oh my gosh, that's horrifying. So it's definitely a good punch in the stomach.
Sadie, you wanted to mention why you thought Rebecca was creepy right off the bat.
Like, if you go to the page where she first appears and she's just kind of standing there in that doorway, she's backlit.
Right.
And the thing that you notice right away is that her outline of her, like, skin is white. It's white lines instead of the black lines that everyone else has. So she's like, oh, she's so beautiful. She's, like, radiant. Yeah. But then, like, as you continue through, it's like, okay, it almost gives her this kind of like transparent feel of like but more of it's like something is not right. Something is different about her. Something is just wrong. and like you don't feel like she's right. There's something wrong with this woman.
Oh, you get that right off the bat. I noticed it with the word bubbles. Did you notice how some of the words she emphasizes are written in a really beautiful cursive script? Yeah, only certain words.
I did notice that too.
Like it's spooky. Like there's something. She's too perfect. She's too like classically beautiful, and there's like especially with the way that she's tall, she's blonde, she's got like this great color to her skin, whereas Mabel is kind of short and dark and like black hair, and
she also wears that light blue dress. Again, I think it's a way to contrast between when the red worms come out, because again the blue-red theme that continues throughout.
Right, exactly. This one is very good. I like this one a lot. The monster is legit. When you see what I almost said Belle. When you see what Rebecca truly looks like, it's pretty horrifying. Yeah, she's very scary. And they hinted this throughout the story because it's not even metaphorical. Like there's the kind of this is a story with a very very big fear of parasites, of things that the worst kind of monster are the burrowing kind, the ones that get inside you, the ones you can't see, that eat you alive from within. And that's like oh god.
And then that even touches back on the previous story too. With the spirit, if we go with that parasite
analogy. Oh yeah, exactly.
And again, this is her babies that will then they need a host.
You know what's creepy is when Rebecca is trying to bond with Belle, you kind of get a subtext there. It's like, well, I thought there were some dresses you might want to try on. What if she's just sizing Mabel up that whole time? Like that's all what she's trying to do.
Well, that's the second she learns Clarence has a little sister, she's like, oh, she must have it straight away, because she's probably going to be perfect for my kids to wear.
Right, well, because clearly Clarence, as is kind of hinted at the end, is also a worm person. Or a bunch of worms wearing, it's, oh god. And the part with the maid, like where she's peeking out the door, and you see her, but she looks all wrinkled and wrong, and then you learn later
she looks like a ghost.
She does,
and there's no color on these pages too.
It's great. Well, the flashbacks don't have any color either. And you learn later that what Mabel actually saw was Rebecca just wearing the maid's skin. Like trying it on. It's horrifying. And the other thing too is like teeth play a huge role in this one. The symbology of teeth. Like that night she dreamed of teeth, and it's just these horrible sucker mouths, like circular teeth, just coming out of shadows that are coming at her in these dreams, and like the man with the piano key teeth that lived in the bait cellar. That kind of thing. The stories her mother told her.
This is the second time teeth is brought up in a more scary way as well, which is like,
That's true. Oh man, all these stories are so good. They're all so good. And I said The Lady with Cold Hands was my favorite. It might still be, but like, oh god, talking about all these again, it's like it's harder for me to pick.
It's true.
It is really hard to pick a favorite in this. It's like they're all just so great and so like masterfully done.
It's the best, in my opinion. It's the best kind of horror in that it's like it makes your skin crawl, but it's not like it stays with you rather than like a cheap scare that's like wah and then it's over. Like these are haunting.
It almost gets under your skin.
These are haunting stories. These stories will stay with you and occasionally flash red with arterial lines.
Then it's the in conclusion part.
I love the picture at the beginning where it's just the window with the two stars on either side. And I'm immediately like, those are eyes.
Yeah.
Those are eyes.
And then that's when we get into the whole Red Riding Hood part.
Yeah, so this one, we just kind of have this little girl who is traveling through the woods from her father's house to her mother's. And it's just her having this nice little walk through the woods, and the art is really lovely, and you're going through it like, okay, the wolf's gonna pop up. The wolf is going to show up somewhere, because I like this page where you kind of see her going through this trail of this, of the woods, and like there are all of these like wolf silhouettes.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I'm looking at it right now.
Honestly, the artwork in this is just gorgeous. Like, oh my gosh.
So many hidden wolf motifs in the scenery. the lake that looks like a wolf, and the mountain with the waterfall that looks like a wolf, and on the right there's a bunch of trees that look like a wolf howling at the sky. It's so cool.
Even like the tree line with the stars looks like a wolf. Like, yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's like the negative space is a wolf.
It's like she is haunted throughout the whole thing. And funny enough, there is this loveliness to it too, because there's like the green to blue in the night sky. The lake is still lightly covered, but there's still like the curves and the there's still like some sharp edge, a couple of sharp edges. So to give you that idea, it's like not all is right. So
it's very like you see the scenery, you see like the trees and everything. Because I think the wolf you're supposed to notice second. You're not supposed to realize they're there right away.
Yeah.
So she gets to her mother's place, and she's, safe, sound. She gets into bed, and she's like, oh, what a lovely walk. And the wolf didn't find me. And there's this window over her bed, and you see what you think first is the moon. And you turn the page, and there's these two white eyes and teeth in the window.
Oh, and but you must travel through those woods again and again, said a shadow at the window. And you must be lucky to avoid the wolf every time. Be it the wolf only needs enough luck to find you once.
I love it. Well done.
Thank you. I think I
and then just that last page.
Oh, so good.
Did you notice the bedside light on her bed too?
Mm-hmm.
Nice callback to the beginning.
I think it is the same girl from the beginning. If you look at the blanket and the pajamas.
Oh my gosh.
It is the same girl.
Just to create that. Oh boy. Oh gosh, that just makes it even more creepier. Are we ready to answer some questions?
Yes.
So, we got multiple questions from Dovey and Alex. Alex gave us 4. Dovey gave us 3. So I figure let's go, Alex, let's switch between them. Like Alex first question, then Dovey, Alex.
That sounds good to me.
This is Alex's first question. Each story presents a semi-timeless tale akin to fairy tales, but written in a much darker and stylistic way. How do you think the art aided in conveying the horror of the stories to the audience? And which stories do you think were the most effective? They're all effective, to be honest. And I think
they're different kinds of effective. But yeah, I'd say The Nesting Place is the most like on the nose horror, because a lot of other things are more like subtext and clues and things like that. Like they're more about what you don't see, or things you see are hinted at like as something more terrible. And Nesting Place is the one where the horror is right there in front of you. It's Rebecca with her face shifting and the worms coming out, Yeah,
I think Nesting Place and A Lady's Hands are cold.
Yeah.
Are the most horror, for sure.
Right.
The rest are more just that wonder, that fear of like the unknown is what you get.
Yes, that's true.
And I feel like each art actually fits it fits the story very well, like especially like in time period, as well as the way the colors are used. Whatever the story calls for, that the artwork fits. There's a simplicity to The Lady's Hands Are Cold, because it does feel like a campfire story, where there's a lot more detail to The Nesting Place, because as you mentioned, that's a more on the nose graphic novel.
Right.
The story of A Lady's Hands Are Cold is much more, the simpler campfire story. But because, like, if you look at, and it makes sense for the time period that it's set in, the line work, there's so much, like, detail, and just, like, in, like, the dresses, and her bed frame, which is outside, like, all the, like, the shrubbery and the plants, and just, there's so much detail. But then the color palette is super simple. It's pretty much just red, blue, black, and white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps it. Like, as if it had been all these different colors, it would have been too much.
Right. I mean...
And it's also that simple color palette that makes it so extra effective.
Right, exactly. The nothing but blue really reinforces the feeling of that the house is cold and lonely and huge. Especially when she's dwarfed by the wallpaper everywhere she goes. Like, it's so good. And again, the illustrations, like, again, they match up so well as to me as being very inspired by Edward Gorey, that it, like, because if you look at Gorey illustrations in a lot of books, I mean, I know we talked about them when we did The House with the Clock in Its Walls, because it's known for those illustrations. It was just, I love it. Like, those illustrations are so synonymous with whimsical but horrific images, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of these stories could do just as well without the text. So I think in terms of like how the art plays into the story, I think the art is like 90% the story.
Yeah, basically.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
Actually, Dovey kind of goes something into that. He says, these stories use a free-form style with the text and panels. What do you think this adds to the way the stories are presented? Are there any disadvantages to this style? I mean, as we mentioned before, by adding the text to not making it just all bubbles or all speaking, it does feel like it's just part of the story, or it's just part of the background. In terms of disadvantages, I mean, I don't see it really as a disadvantage at all.
I think Emily Carroll knew exactly what she was doing with the way she was laying out text. Mm-hmm. Like how we mentioned examples of like how when Rebecca puts emphasis in certain words, we have that cursive with like the way the red kind of paints across when there's this creepy singing in. You guys know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, we know.
Even like what I meant to point out in the last story with Belle, there's the points where like everyone around her is talking and you can tell she's just not interested or not listening. Those speech bubbles are like cropped off. They're like,
oh yeah,
cropped off by the panel, and you can tell like, well, we can't read it because she's not paying attention.
Yeah. Because it's all from the point of view of Maybelle.
It's background noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that. Like, it's all of the speech and text is part of the art.
Exactly.
That's why I'm saying this is like 90% art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Now, Alex's next question, and actually, David, I think, I can't remember if it was David or Sade who brought this up. I think it was you, that this is the one character was only the one male character.
Right.
He says, all but one story has a female protagonist. Do you think that the author is conveying a message by using primarily female main characters? And if so, what could it be?
I mean, I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest. I think that I just think this. I'm thinking of the stories as stories first.
Yeah.
Like I like that's like to me they're engaging to the point where I'm not just. It's not like I'm trying to say this without sounding like. I'd like not being misconstrued. I mean, like the stories are it didn't matter to me. I didn't really. I mean, I noticed the genders of the characters in the stories, but it like the fact that it was more swayed female than male, like the ratio. It was like not a factor for me to think about. It's just like they're just stories and they're told, and that's what matters to me.
Well, and she is.
I mean, I feel that way about stories in general.
She is a female writer, and usually
I think it might just come down to the preference of, writing characters that you relate to better, that you feel more comfortable with, and that's why we might see a larger female cast. If we look at each story individually, like the first one with the three sisters, they could have been three brothers. It wouldn't have changed at all. With the lady's hands are cold.
Well, that's a very
that one makes more sense.
Yeah,
it was,
yeah, because it shows the male as this predatory figure, and then eventually like the female or dead wife.
That's true.
Basically taking advantage and becoming the predatory one.
That's true.
The one with the brothers, there's that Cain and Abel aspect to it, where I think I don't know, there's something. I don't know why, but there's something slightly more heinous in my mind about two brothers, one that kills the other, than two sisters.
Oh yeah. Plus, there's the whole sort of you can see it. If we're gonna talk about that part of it, yeah. There's the whole masculine idea of, wow, my brother is going to get all the credit. I'm always the underhanded one, and I use violence to solve this.
Yeah.
I would turn against my own brother because I'm tired of living in his shadow. I'm tired of being the one who loses, and it's a competition thing. It's an unspoken thing. It's like the overshadowing thing. And I'm not saying archetypally that's a male thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a male thing. So.
With the my friend Jana, I think it was also trying to get this idea of like the Fox sisters, and I think that it was kind of trying to sort of invoke that more.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think when people think of like mediums, people generally imagine like a female.
Yeah.
I mean, there were plenty of male mediums out during the whole spiritualism phase.
But you don't hear about a lot of them. You hear more about the women who were mediums.
And I feel like maybe more in like media, females are depicted more as the medium is maybe why we have that mindset now.
Right.
But
also, but I think the focus on that one was more on the friendship that these two girls had.
I was going to say, and then this is also written by a gay woman.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, again, that's why I enjoy the very, very subtle and maybe even imagined subtext of deeper affections, at least from Yvonne. So,
and then the last one, I mean, the main character could have easily been man or a woman, but it is necessary.
Could have easily have been like a little brother.
It's true, but
well, that would have changed the nature of the relationship, though. Like Rebecca coming on might have been even seen as a little bit more predatory in another way. Like instead of I'm trying to be friends with my husband's, like you get this innocence, like I'm trying to be friends with my sister-in-law, and it could have been construed as I'm preying on my brother-in-law, my little brother-in-law, maybe it could be construed as a lascivious kind of way. Like it's a more like, there is a context there that could, I'm not saying that's, but it does change the dynamic a little bit. And then, okay. So I said at the beginning, maybe it could have been changed, but now that you're talking about it, I am thinking about it more. And yes, this is actually very true.
But Rebecca,
right, what that's the other thing too.
Yeah, Rebecca had to be a woman though.
Oh, Rebecca had to be a woman. She's a mother.
It's exactly that mother mentality is basically the important part of her character. So.
And then the girl from the introduction and the conclusion is a Red Riding Hood analogy for some of it. So.
And to keep with that work. So
again, the predatory nature of the wolf could be the predatory nature of the male to a degree. Also with the nesting place, the fact that Belle's brother Clarence, he's dismissive of her. Oh, you're just being silly, Again, that's another very gendered thing. So thank you for the food for thought there. Like I said that Alex. Without thinking about it, but yeah.
Dobie asks, which story was your favorite and why? I think we all we
did that one.
Yeah.
His Face All Red is my favorite because I am Fujoshi trash and I see the gay subtext.
And then I already mentioned the nesting place was my favorite because that Junji Ito.
The more I think about it, the Junji Ito, yeah. The more I think about it, it's definitely for me between My Friend Jana and A Lady's Hands Are Cold. Because, again, both are kind of ghost stories. I love the medium aspect and the friendship between the two characters, and they're watching their sort of this weird thing come over Jana, the writing in the book, like the whole mystery of that scenario is very cool. And I like the very classic Edward Gorey / ghost story vibe of A Lady's Hands Are Cold. So I think I don't know.
I think this shows the strength of each story. The fact that we all have a different favorite, because usually in the past we're usually on the same page of like, oh, our favorite is this.
When it came to an anthology or something.
Yeah. This is the first time I think we each have a very vastly different favorite for very different reasons. And I think that shows the strength of her writing in general, that each one is that good.
Yeah, for sure.
Alex asks, how do you think the use of a particular color palette and pattern affects the mood of the story?
We've been kind of bringing...
We've kind of been touching on this throughout the whole episode.
And actually, Dobie asks a similar question, but more specific. The color red and the theme of guilt are common between these stories. Do you think these are invoked well? Red, we've discussed. Guilt, though?
Well, definitely guilt in His Face All Red. I mean, that's a key part of the story.
Definitely guilt there.
I just thought of another weird instance of the color red that I don't think we talked about. After Belle gets out of the cave and she's in bed, did you notice how her eyes look bruised?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's black all around her eyes, but her eyes are red. Like they're not bloodshot, but she looks like she's tired. Like they're dry and irritated. And that's kind of creepy too, knowing that those worms all wrapped around her face before she regained consciousness.
I think that's more in the sense of showing like a way of showing the trauma or horror that she's seen. Because if you go back to A Lady's Hands Are Cold, when the corpse is coming to life, there is just black around the girl's eyes.
Right.
That also shows, like, oh, she has seen some shit now.
Yep.
And not to mention, by the end of the story, her eyes are, like, gone. There's just black circles where her eyes should be. So... So we have, like, the guilt with the two brothers, where the one killed the other. If we go to my friend Jana, with Red being the guilt, like, the guilt that she sent her away that night, and now that those feelings are this foggy spirit, like, that, I think there's guilt there. Like, maybe that's why it attached to her, because now one of her negative feelings is the guilt of, like, she could have maybe saved Jana. Right. Not to mention the text, when Jana, quote unquote, calls up through the window and her text is red. How do we know that was Jana's voice?
I don't see much of a guilt in terms of the nesting place. I'm trying to think if there is any guilt there. I don't.
There's the red text boxes with the white text that are from Belle's perspective, and a lot of them are when she's when she's telling stories, or when she's hearing stories about, or when stories are being related about her mother. So that's interesting.
The Lady's Hands Are Cold, though. I'm trying to figure out the guilt in that one, because there is no guilt from the man at all, and then the woman doesn't exactly feel guilty, as she is more curious and then just suffered something horrific.
Although he is guilty of having murdered her. The red text spilling through the scene is like, behold the guilt. This will lead you to me revealing the guilt of my husband.
Not like.
I feel like the red going across. You mean the red, like, speech bubbles that go across the pages?
Right. Yeah.
I see that more as like the dead wife's, like, just her anger and her rage at having been murdered and then hidden away is, like, spilling out into the rest of the house.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because it could have been displayed as cold blue text, but it's not. It's the white on red.
Yeah, it's that. Again, as we mentioned before, there's that passion and violence that it signifies.
Yeah.
But that's.
I don't think the red so much specifies guilt in each story, but more the red is the stronger emotions, the guilt, the rage, the violence.
I agree. Actually, yeah, red is basically the passion, or that.
Red is scary.
Red is fear.
Red is horrifying. Remember whenever the tick tick ticks came up?
Yep.
That was red text with the teeth. And color theory in fiction. It's so fun.
But in terms of, but I didn't think of it like guilt, like culpability. I was thinking more like the feeling of guiltiness. But you got a point. There is a culpability factor.
I'm not saying the rage and the factor. But again, if something is going to expose the guilty party in the Lady's Hands Are Cold, it's going to be something affiliated with red, and I think that's what I perceive from that as well.
And then the last question by Alex. This is just a simple one, and we already agreed about this. Do you find the imagery in the nesting place remind you of the body horror of Uzumaki? I know I did. Yeah, we won't shut up about it. We're all like, yeah, this is totally Uzumaki.
Yeah.
It's that same level of body horror, and it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I would call it foul only if there were more spirals involved, but there weren't.
This is.
Oh God.
This is some.
When her whole
stuff.
face, that one panel where her whole face is peeled back and all that's in her,
and it's just
the worms
teeth.
In the teeth.
Oh, I love it. So
or like
much.
her eyes are coming out, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh. Ugh.
I love the thought of just like poor Belle is sitting there in bed with this thing, and its face just keeps changing, and things keep coming out, and the fingers, and just
the fact Belle is right now holding her own and is like in bed while this woman is like basically revealing herself as the monster she is, and the fact that Belle is not screaming or running but is like actually uses her mind to come up with an idea to stop her is incredible. I gotta give her props for that. Just, I would be like, oh my god, get me out of here right now.
I hope everybody who listened to this read this, because if you didn't, read it.
Yeah,
it is.
Read it and go look at the rest of Emily Carroll's work. There's a bunch of webcomics available on her website, and they're very good.
I am going to definitely check them out. Now that I've learned about this, I am definitely going to check it out. So we're going to continue with our graphic novel joy of horror, but go a bit different this time. We're going on to David's choice, which is...
It's been a long time coming. We figured we might as well get it done. We're going to be reading Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth.
That's right, guys. We're going Batman now.
Now...
Woo.
Yeah. Now, again, a lot of people will argue, Batman and horror? Well, I know Batman's kind of dark and gothic, but no. This is a horror comic, in my opinion. This is a horror graphic novel.
I'm excited. I haven't read this one.
I've not read this one either.
This is absolutely my favorite Batman graphic novel, and I can't wait to talk about it. But we will do that in January.
Yes. Our next episode will be coming out January 13th. If you have any questions or would like to contribute to our love of Emily Carroll and or her novel Through the Woods, please reach us at darklylitpod on Twitter or email us at darklylitpodcasts@gmail.com.
And a quick thank you to everyone who sent in questions. Thanks, you guys.
You guys are awesome. Do we have any plugs or anything coming up that we want to...
Well... you can find me on Creative Horror with both the Midnight Marinara and Undercooked Analysis podcasts. Midnight Marinara is on a bit of a hiatus right now as we gather more material and decide where we want to go with the show next. However, we did just have a pretty rad season finale, so if you haven't heard that, it's worth checking out. It's an original story that I had a lot of help on from an amazing group of people, Sade included, who was one of my major consultants for it. It is a story about La Llorona. And then, of course, Undercooked Analysis updates every week on Tuesday, so that's worth checking out if you want to hear the shenanigans of me, Alan, Kayla, and other recurring and sometimes brand new guests just reading stories cold. And Musings will have which is Kayla and I's joint podcast about Disney on the Penview Network. We are going to be talking about The Jungle Book this month with Justin Keyson and Andrew Lindy of... Nothing New, a remake podcast. So that's going to be a lot of fun. This will be the last film that Walt was involved in before he passed away, Walt Disney. So it'll be interesting.
Hey, go check out The Witching Hour, which is also on creativehorror.com. It is a podcast for creative horror fans. We try to cover a variety of topics. We are also on kind of a hiatus right now, but we will be back in January with an episode on Ted Bundy. You'll listen to us talk about Ted Bundy for a whole hour. We're also going to have people send us their perfect murder plots. Like, if you have ever tried to think of the perfect murder, send it to us. And we're going to read them and talk about them with the Ted Bundy episode. But we are on break right now. We'll be back in January.
Awesome. Well, it was good to get back together, but it's cold outside, and I'm pretty sure the wolves are closing in, so we better bundle up and prepare for winter, the oncoming Yuletide.
We probably shouldn't blow out the candles this time.
Let's not blow out the candles this time. I'm afraid I'm deeply, deeply afraid that there's going to be a wolf nearby.